House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is so desperate to become Speaker of the House that he'll stoop to any low to fire up Trump's base.
I want you to watch Nancy Pelosi hand me that gavel. It'll be hard not to hit her with
a spokesman for McCarthy said he was, quote, obviously joking. Because it's funny to incite violence against someone who's already a right-wing target. As NBC4 reporter Scott McFarland points out, there are dozens of U.S. Capitol insurrection cases so far in which defendants mention or appear to threaten Nancy Pelosi. The threats, many using misogynistic language, include a call to, quote, hang Pelosi, a warning that the crowd is, quote, coming for her, and a declaration that she is, quote, a traitor. I'm joined now by Ohio Democratic Congressman and Senate candidate Tim Ryan of Ohio. Congressman Ryan, thank you very much for coming to the ReidOut. So was Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy joking?
Well, he's not a very funny guy. I think that's pretty obvious. Anytime you're trying to, talk about hitting the Speaker of the House with a gavel, you're in the wrong. But he's not a funny guy. I think he tried to make a joke. He's not very funny. And they're searching for issues to try to incite their base. Dr. Seuss, what he's saying here at that dinner, they got to get the focus back on the real issues of what the vast majority of Americans are focused on. That's how do we get wages up? How do we have some economic security for those people who are doing everything right? How do we have retirement security? How do we start really dealing with this economic threat coming out of China and making sure we dominate these industries of the future? Jonathan, they don't want to talk about any of that stuff. They want to talk about all this other nonsense. And I think that's what you saw the other day.
Right, because Congressman Ryan, I'm just wondering, what does it say about the tenor and tone of your workplace when you've got the leader of the other party joking? He's not joking. Talking about hitting the speaker with a gavel. I mean, since January 6th, I've heard many of your colleagues talk about just sort of the fear they have about their Republican colleagues. Does what Leader McCarthy say fit into that atmosphere of menace that appears to be there in the Capitol?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, you look at the January 6th testimony from last week. You see that they're completely ignoring the insurrection to the Capitol. They're completely ignoring what happened to members of Congress, what happened to the Capitol Police, what happened to Washington Metro. They're looking the other way on all of these issues, and they're so disconnected from reality that jokes like that happen that aren't funny and play into these greater threats that we're seeing from against not just Nancy Pelosi, but many other members of the Democratic caucus. Mm-hmm. And he just feeds into it. But what you're seeing here is a Republican party that is rudderless. They are searching for issues. They're searching for topics to start culture wars on Dr. Seuss or any masks or whatever they could get their hands on. So what you're seeing is a level of desperation because they're not talking about what's in the best interest of workers or the American people.
So then, Congressman Ryan, then they might be searching for issues to keep them from talking about real issues. But you've got members of Congress who are going out of their way to pal around with far right extremists. You've got Congressman Paul Gosar, who's been associated with the white nationalist Nick Fuentes, which is, according to New York Times, the most vivid example of the Republican Party's growing acceptance of extremism. How worried should we be as Americans that the Republican Party, it's not the Republican Party anymore. It's an extremist party that's perfectly comfortable embracing domestic terrorists?
It's something we all should be worried about. I think this is a great threat to our democracy when you have an insurrection, people scaling walls, hitting cops with lead pipes across the side of the head, and almost the entire Republican Party has looked the other way for that. I just saw where, Congressman Gates and others were calling down to make sure that the insurrectionists were properly treated at the jail they were in. I mean, are you kidding me? This is the issue that's most important to you, with all of the income inequality, with all of the economic insecurity, high levels of addiction, deaths of despair, people losing their shirts, people still, aren't getting vaccinated so we can get the economy back up and running. And you're taking time out of your day to call and make sure that the insurrectionists are getting treated properly. I mean, give me a break. That just shows you how disconnected they are, Jonathan.